She guides me and she walks beside me. Dolly has a gift for inspiring and bringing people together. So what is it about her that speaks so profoundly to so many people from so many disparate backgrounds? And I think it's in part because Dolly really knows who she is. She knows that she shines. She knows what her purpose is in this life, and she shares her gifts with the world, and she has gotten filthy rich in the process. She has known her past since she was just a little girl, writing her first song at the age of 5, and has since written more than 5,000 songs. Dolly grew up in a family that loved her and encouraged her talents because they all knew she was going to grow up and do something fabulous and change the world. But not all of us have been as clear as Dolly on what our unique gifts are, and we may not have been given the proper tools to explore them. Not all of us have had the support systems in place to encourage us, to build us up, or to make us the better versions of ourselves. Now, when I read this speech to my husband, Stephen, who's right there in the second row, he said I was just looking for an excuse to put Dolly in my speech, which could be true, but one of my gifts is that I can take a lot of seemingly random information, correlate it, and make sense out of it, at least in my own mind. That being said, I want to take you back to 2015, and some of you here will probably remember, and I might get a little emotional just as a warning. Stephen brought me some tissue right here. Oops. But that November, can you still hear this? Is it good? Hold on one sec. Gotta make sure we take care of the Zoom people. That November, the local church here in Salt Lake City let it leak that they were no longer going to accept the children of LGBTQIA parents onto their membership rolls. At least not until they were 18, and only then if they disavowed their homosexual parents. Now, I haven't been a believer since I was 14, and I haven't let those beliefs dictate my life since, but to say I was outraged at this news would be an understatement. Why do you care? Somebody asked. I cared because I knew this policy would hurt my community. I knew it would hurt my family. And more than anything, I knew it would hurt those very children that this church claimed to protect. Because once upon a time, I was one of those kids, as many of you were too. And when it leaked, I called my dad. He lives in Australia, and he is a devout follower of this particular religion. He was a convert. And because of the time difference, he hadn't heard the news, and he was blindsided. And when I asked him how his church could be so cruel, I could hear him crying on the other end of the phone. I don't know, son, he said. Just weeks earlier, he had helped bless the daughter of a lesbian couple within his own congregation. Well, I resigned my membership immediately, something I should have done many years ago, along with thousands of other people. But it was something that I avoided because I hadn't ever wanted to admit that it mattered. And I carried that anger against this church for weeks. But then I attended a lecture by my friend Jerry Bowie at the Gender Revolution Conference sponsored by the Utah Pride Center. Now, Jerry is a professional therapist and a queer spiritual leader, one of the few non-Indigenous people to be given permission to perform sacred sweat lodges and other indigenous spiritual ceremonies. You know, I had heard Jerry speak before, but this was one of those moments that it all came sharply into focus. And he spoke of the indigenous cultures here in the Americas in which queer people were embraced and considered gifted. They believed that because some people straddled both the masculine and the feminine, that they had special and sacred insight. And in the 1960s, an English term, two-spirits, was coined to describe those with this gift. But long before our Western ideas of sexuality and gender came along, their communities recognized that these individuals had a contribution to make, that every member of their community had a vital contribution to make. You know, many indigenous earth-based cultures all over the world have known for millennia that in order to survive and to thrive, they need everyone to bring their unique, inherent gifts to the table. In these cultures, childhood was a time to explore and to develop and to harness those gifts, to encourage them and never to diminish them. Queer people were often the spiritual leaders, the diplomats, and the cultural gatekeepers of these societies. So, here I am, sitting in this classroom at Rowland Hall Middle School, listening to Jerry speak about this thing that I have heard him talk about many times before. But this time it was like a magic spell was cast upon me, and the anger that I was carrying around suddenly vanished. And what I felt was pity. Imagine your children, children of God, bringing you these beautiful gifts and laying them at your feet. Gifts that could enrich you in your community ways that you could only imagine. And imagine turning those children away. Imagine closing the door on them. And as I listened to Jerry speak, I imagined those 12 old white men in their tower, all in Mr. Max suits, dealing with this PR disaster and agreeing to agree to tell their people that these gifts were worthless. And it made me sad. It made me sad for them, that they would never see the real beauty and the riches of this lifetime. They would go to their heaven on a conveyor belt of Stepford husbands and wives in blue and pink, just like the game of life. I remember seeing a story on the local news back in the early 90s about a gay Navajo man and what it meant to be gay in their culture. And they interviewed his 80-year-old grandmother, and they asked her what she thought of her grandson. And she said, "We don't believe in wasting people. We don't believe in wasting people." We are all inherently born with gifts, special powers, and unique gifts that can enrich us in our communities if we seek them out and we use them on purpose and with purpose. One of those gifts for me, I believe, was being born gay. I say it's a gift because unlike some of my straight siblings, I knew that the prescribed formula for happiness and success that they were given as children wasn't going to be the same for me. I was forced to figure out early on what that plan was going to be. And I was particularly lucky growing up in different states and in different countries, so I knew that the world was big and that there was a place out there for me in it. I just had to find it. I had to find my people. And as I grew up, I also knew that we spend a majority of our adult lives working, and that I better figure out what it was that I wanted to do with my At the age of 24, I had a crisis because I hadn't yet figured that out. I had gone to college and what I wanted wasn't there yet. I had moved to Europe and San Francisco, and I danced away my weekends and I slept with as many beautiful men as I could. And my weekdays were spent working as an administrative assistant for an AIDS nonprofit on Castro Street. I was in the thick of it, but I knew I still hadn't found a calling or a career. Up until then, I didn't know what I wanted in a job, but I knew what I didn't. And then I dated a hairdresser. And I saw him talking to people all day long, moving around, wearing clothes that he loved, listening to music, making his own schedule, being creative, and most importantly, making a lot of money doing it. Until then, I hadn't allowed myself to consider hairdressing because I was a 4.0 student, most likely to succeed. People like me didn't become hairdressers. Besides, it was such a gay cliche. But then I thought, who cares? I am a gay cliche. And there ain't nothing wrong with that, honey. It is a beautiful thing. You know, over the years, I've heard people stand in front of audiences like this and say, you know, not all gay men are hairdressers. And I would sit there thinking, yeah, well, some of us are. I went on to do pretty well at hairdressing before discovering another skill that I have, and that's teaching and mentoring other people to be successful. I used to work at one of the biggest hair salons in the country in Atlanta, Georgia, at Van Michael Salons. And the hairdressers there were paid really well. There was about 80 to 120 employees in one hair salon every day. It was huge. And those hairdressers, they weren't the highest paid in that particular market, but they were loyal to a fault. And I wondered, what was it that made them so loyal to Van, the owner? And I discovered that it wasn't just money that most people were looking for. They were looking for validation, appreciation, and above all, opportunity. Van had a career ladder for his people, starting with the training salon and then working your way up to senior stylist, educator, manager, then on to photo shoots, fashion shows, and so on. We had stylists working with some of the biggest celebrities that you can imagine. And what young hairdresser wouldn't want to be a part of that? People came into my life. Oh, sorry. The first was my career coach, Lynn Christian. And at the time, I was working 3 jobs, running a beauty school, traveling and teaching for a corporate brand, and doing hair behind the chair. And I was working 7 days a week, I think in order to keep my mind off the trauma that I had just experienced. To say I was burnt out would be a gross understatement, and I knew something had to change. I hired a coach because I needed direction in my career and in turn, my life. His business model was not only solid, but the way he talked about the professionals who would fill up the studios was with admiration and respect, something people in my industry often don't get from business leaders. Jason owned a car dealership, so he didn't know much about the industry, but he was in awe of the people who were a part of it. They always seemed to have fun, and they always seemed to have money. We often hear that creative people aren't good at business. I hear this all the time, which is a load of crap. We are good at business, or we wouldn't be in it. And if we weren't, we wouldn't take so much of your money to make you look and feel good. Jason knew that, and from the beginning, he set out to provide creative entrepreneurs the space and the tools to watch them soar, knowing that if they did, he would be successful in turn. And I knew I had to be a part of it, this revolution. I began doing some consulting for him, and I even had my own studio at our Salt Lake location for over 7 years before opening my salon at 9th and 9th, Matthew Landis Atelier. But I get all tear all the time.
Hi.
Oh no, people, yeah, you can't even imagine. I've been a part of Image in one form or another since 2009. You see, what sets Image apart from other business models is that we think outside the box while ironically renting boxes to creative thinkers and doers. From that first location in Draper, we have grown to more than 130 locations nationwide. And with all that growth, we have never forgotten that it's ultimately our pros, our renters, our customers that make us who we are and are responsible for our success. In 2020, partly in response to the challenges our pros faced during the pandemic, Jason, our COO, Taylor Lamont, and I created our Image Pro Business Program in order to help more solid and sustainable business foundations, in order for our pros to thrive and to do what they do best. We teach our pros how to market themselves, how to manage their money, how to price themselves, and how to plan for retirement. Education that nobody else in our industry is providing. We have never lost sight that it's the unique gifts and offerings of each individual that makes us stronger as a whole. Now, in the last 18 months, millions of people have walked away from their jobs to seek out careers and businesses that are more aligned with their values and that speak to their unique gifts. It's been called the Great Resignation. And with companies having a hard time finding employees, it's time to stop seeing employees as employees, but partners in the holistic success of your business community. As queer business leaders, we have a unique opportunity to change the way business is conducted, to straddle different worlds in a way that many of our contemporaries can't even imagine. We can build our communities within and contribute to our communities without. And here's how. First, find out what makes you unique. Explore, take classes, read books, listen to podcasts, go on walks, meditate, get a coach. Give me a call and let's get together and have a conversation about your unique situation. Second, do the same for those around you. Help discover what makes them special and help them to grow. Provide them with the opportunity to share with you and your business the unique gifts that each of them bring. It will only make your business stronger and more successful. Give them a path to follow that speaks to their values and to their sense of purpose. And share your queer gifts with your communities. You don't even have to be a queer person, but share those gifts with an open heart and keep an open mind. Sometimes the greatest gift that you can give the world, and you may never know who is helped by it, is to just be your authentic self. So wear a skirt to work if that's your thing. Wear flannel, or sequins, or a silly gold poodle brooch on your shirt. Stop modulating your voice to make somebody else feel more comfortable. Let the purse or the power drill fall out of your mouth. And let the lightness in your loafers carry you to the next level of success. And rather than dim someone else's light, brighten yours. Since we started with Dolly, I think it's only right to end with the Dalai Lama. The future will be in the hands of those who belong to the 21st century. You have the opportunity and responsibility to build a better community. This means developing warm-heartedness in this very life here and now. So do whatever work you do, but ask yourselves now and then, how can I contribute to human beings being happier and more peaceful? And in the words of the great Dolly Parton, find out who you are and do it on purpose. Thank you.
Any questions for Matthew?
I got the brooch at Decades. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah?
What do you find as from a business coaching standpoint, what do you find for most entrepreneurs who make the most amount of mistakes or what they're not prepared for well, for the growth of their business?
I think having the end goal in mind, like, as Jason said, think big. And I think knowing where you want to go and then working backwards and developing a road map. A lot of people in my industry are just going along and getting along, and really ultimately we started our businesses so that we could have better lives. So I think knowing what it is that we want, not only from our business, but what we want to achieve in our own personal lives, I think. Yeah.
What's the best way to find a business coach that fits you, like an individual personally?
Well, what I have done, and as a coach, I have a lot of coaches, and the best thing to do is to interview several coaches, 2 or 3 coaches, and then I have a mentor coach, and really how I chose her was I just went with my gut. Like, who do I, because it can be a long-term relationship, so who do I want to spend time with, and who inspires me? Yeah. All right, thanks. I couldn't reach the tissues in my pocket because of the stuff, so.
Does that mean there's something